catastrophic flooding in Texas, where the lieutenant governor is now saying there are children unaccounted for from a girls' camp in the state.
For the parents who are waiting, particularly that had children in Camp Mystic. Camp Mystic is a camp that has over 750 kids. Right now, there are 20-some that aren't accounted for. That does not mean they've been lost. They could be in a tree. They could be out of communication. We're praying for all of those missing to be found alive.
Let's bring in CNN's Ed Lavandera, who joins us over the phone as he is on his way to one of the affected areas. Ed, what more do we know?
Well, Boris, we know that this is unraveling to be a nightmare situation for hundreds, if not thousands of families in this Texas Hill Country, Central Texas region where rainfall has fallen. Not only has, as what the lieutenant governor there said, that there are still some 20 children believed to be missing from that Camp Mystic, which is a popular camp that children attend during the summer here in Texas. But the sheriff is also now saying that there are at least 13 dead, and that death toll could continue to rise in the hours ahead as crews are still trying to search for survivors or any of the victims that are still in the path of the Guadalupe River there in the Kerr County area. This is an area where rainfall has fallen for almost 24 hours in very intense ways. And it's not just there in Kerr County, but the rainfall areas have dramatically affected much of central Texas as well. So as we've been driving in, we're still about, we're making our way through the Texas Hill Country, and there are rivers and creeks that are just, kind of coming out of its banks. But right now, the intense focus there in Kerr County, where the sheriff confirms that there are at least 13 people dead, that death toll expected to go higher, and obviously a great deal of concern for many families who've been affected by all this, and a number of children from this popular campground area that are still missing, and a frantic search for them continues here this afternoon for us.
Yeah, no question, and we hope that officials find them safe. Ed, tell us about this area of Texas, the Hill Country. Tell us about the landscape and whether these sorts of storms are typical for the region.
Well, they have had a devastating flood like this in some of the rivers in this particular area back in 1987, which is a flood event that many people remember and talk about quite a bit. But one of the authorities speaking here this afternoon in Kerr County said that what is unfolding at this moment far surpasses what was experienced back in 1987. But from time to time, there are rivers that make their way through the Texas Hill Country where you have this intense amount of rainfall that falls in a very quick way, can cause devastating flooding like this. But there's a Camp Mystic is a popular summer camp it's an all-girls camp just up the river. There's another camp, and we're trying to still get information on that one. Camp La Junta, where it's an all-boys camp. So this is a region, especially for this summertime time of year, where it's a very popular place for people to go hang out on the rivers, especially on a July 4th weekend.
And would you happen to know, Ed, what kind of warning was put out if folks on the ground were aware that something like this might be coming?
I think one of the local officials said that there isn't a very elaborate warning system in this particular area, but regardless, the amount of rainfall that has fallen in the last 24 hours came rather quickly. I don't have a real gauge as to whether or not the people who were closest to all of this had a real good indication of what was unfolding or what was about to unfold. That isn't totally clear to me yet, so we'll continue to report on that as well.
And I know you're no stranger to storms in Texas. I believe it was 2017. There was a hurricane there where you were actually on the ground as several rescues were happening. Can you give us an idea of the kind of resources that folks in the Lone Star State have on hand right now to respond to something of this scale?
Well, we do know that there's air support, there's helicopters that have been brought in. The state authorities and Texas emergency management officials have said, they are sending in a squadron of different units that can help in this situation. So there are high water rescue teams. So there's boats in the area. There's also helicopters in the area, as I've mentioned. But what is also hampering the situation today is that the rainfall has continued. I was just looking at the radar a little while ago, and it seems like that Kerr County area is almost to the point where some of the heaviest rainfall has passed it, and there might be a little bit of a respite here that would give those emergency crews some time to work and get into the areas most affected. But remember, as all this water accumulates, especially upstream, it has to flow downstream. So this becomes a very treacherous situation for those high water rescue teams, where these water levels in these rivers will be rising for some hours, even after the storm passes.
Yeah, especially as the ground is saturated. Hopefully some relief coming to those folks very soon. Ed Lavandera, we're awaiting an update from officials in south central Texas where multiple people are dead after historic flooding overnight. You can see some of the images here. This is from Kerr County, northwest of San Antonio. That area has taken the brunt of this storm, and local officials are still trying to figure out exactly how many people have been killed.
But in terms of exactly how many are missing, and unaccounted for, we're not sure about that number. But we have a bunch of them that we're trying to get back. Most of them, we don't know who they are. We're having to have fingerprint them at the funeral home. And one of them was completely naked. He didn't have any ID on him at all. So we're trying to get the identity of these folks, but we don't have it yet.
You can hear some emotion leaking there from that mayor. The governor says that the state is rushing all available resources to the area. Take a look at some video we're going to show you actually from a local resident's Ring camera that CNN obtained after a police officer came to her home around 6 this morning, warning her that it was time to get out.
Oh my God! Hey, there's people screaming in the river. We're evacuating everybody. Oh my God! Can you knock on your neighbor's door and tell them to get out now? The park's completely over. Oh my God! The people you're screaming are in the river right now. Oh my God! Let's get everybody out.
CNN meteorologist Derek Van Dam is monitoring the situation and has more.
Boris, it has been a catastrophic 18 hours of flash flooding across the hill country of Texas. One river gauge in Comfort, Texas, recorded a rise of 26 feet in 45 minutes. Look at this. Homes swept off of their foundations. There's only the front porch left standing. This is along the Guadalupe River in Kerr County. And look at how these trees have been completely toppled over. Gives you an indication of the force of the water that swept through this region, by the way, under the darkness of night. So how terrifying it must have been for residents that were finding themselves in that flash flood situation. Now, look, this is still an evolving situation at least, right? We've got rainfall totals, at least accumulation estimates from radar that have totaled over a foot. Here's Kerrville. You can see the San Angelo region just to the north and west, several locations indicating 12 inches or more of water. And that water is eventually going to flow downstream, particularly along the Guadalupe River. This is a river gauge forecast for Spring Branch. This is due north of San Antonio. Look at the flood stage that was at just over 1.5 feet at 10 a.m. local time on Friday. Look at the forecast by tomorrow morning. Just shy of 35 feet. So that is a rapid rise in water. Authorities there referring to it as a wave of water. And you can imagine as that pushes down the river, how destructive it can be. You don't even have to imagine. You saw the video I showed you just a few minutes ago. So we still have our ongoing flash flood warnings, flood watches and alerts across the Texas Hill Country, now inclusive of San Antonio, Kerrville certainly included. The high forecast radar imagery shows kind of a bit of an influx of more moisture wrapping into the same locations for early tomorrow morning. It doesn't look to or appear to be as heavy as what we experienced yesterday or late last night, but certainly something to monitor. We don't need more rain. Some of our computer models picking up an additional 6 inches of rainfall in some of these hard-hit areas. So we'll be on the lookout for additional flash flooding, not to mention the cresting of the rivers as the water moves downstream. And one other thing to note, Boris, is that this has some of the worst drought across the U.S. as we speak. So the conditions here on the ground are extremely dry. And when you get that much water in this short period of time, there's nowhere else for it to go but to pool up and cause flash flooding. Boris?
Our thanks to Derek Van Dam for that report. We're, of course, going to keep an eye on conditions and the forecast and bring you any updates as we get them.